I remember waking up, I think it was 6 o'clock in the morning, and going on the news and just realizing that really the full-scale invasion began. I still remember months before the full-scale invasion discussing with my family that maybe they should get some power banks or some generators just in case. And it's much larger battle than just, between Russia and Ukraine. This is really about the kind of world we want to live in the future, and which norms and rules are going to dominate that world. Still have a huge amount of Russian money that is actually staying in the bank accounts here in Belgium and in some other countries, and all of this money could easily be spent on helping Ukraine.
Welcome to Coeurtisol, the podcast that puts you in the shoes of a member of the European Parliament, where you can vote on policy proposals and express your own opinion on topics that raise your cortisol level and are close to your heart. Today, my guest is Yana Brovdiy, who is a volunteer who leads the media team at Promote Ukraine, an NGO based in Brussels. Yana, thank you for welcoming me today in your office here at Promote Ukraine. Can I first ask very basically, how are you feeling today?
I'm okay, but it has been quite a few difficult days, last days in Ukraine because of a lot of rockets being launched all over the country. So the last few days have been difficult psychologically, but physically I'm fine.
Indeed, we are here today because we're going to talk about Ukraine, really about the Russian war on Ukraine. Just to go back a bit in time, on the 24th of February 2022, the world woke up to the news that Russia started to invade and attack Ukraine. And I have a specific question about that day. Can you tell us how you remember this day? Do you remember, for example, where you were on that day, what you were doing when you learned that Russia attacked Ukraine?
So I remember that day very well. I think, like most Ukrainians, we will forever remember it, and we'll probably be telling our children and grandchildren about it. I myself was here in Brussels, and yes, I remember waking up, I think it was 6 o'clock in the morning, and going on the news and just realizing that really the full-scale invasion began, and it was really, hard to comprehend still today, but yes, I was here.
I also wanted to ask you if the news came as a total surprise for you. Because, of course, first of all, already with what happened 10 years ago with Crimea, we could maybe expect something more. But I remember that when Russia attacked Ukraine in 2022, in February 2022, I saw a few days before some of my friends from Ukraine posting stories about that, about the fact that they were sure that Russia was about to attack Ukraine. So I wanted to ask you, first of all, was it also your case? Did you expect that a few days before? And how come some Ukrainian citizens knew about it before it happened?
So no, it was not that. It did not come to me as a total surprise, even though, of course, it was still a shock, because yes, because of the fact that the war already began in 2014. I think for us, we've been living kind of with the reality of the war for many years. So that's why, for us, in 2022, a full-scale invasion began, but in fact, the war began much earlier in 2014. And I still remember months before the full-scale invasion discussing with my family that maybe they should get some power banks or some generators just in case. So I was also reading different analyses, both those that were saying that the full-scale invasion will not happen, as well as those that said that it's very likely that will happen. It's just a matter of in how many places Russia is going to attack. So I was at least sensitized to the fact that the full-scale invasion can happen, but even then it was a shock to me, as for most of people, I think.
I saw a post very recently, I think it was on the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine account on Instagram, and they were highlighting the very concrete impacts of war in the daily life of Ukrainian citizens. And among others, I saw that there is electricity only 4 hours per day, at least in certain regions. Can you describe what a day in Ukraine looks like nowadays, according to your friends and family that are there?
So, it very much depends where you are in Ukraine, because some regions people don't even have electricity at all. The closer you are to the front line, the more difficult your daily life is, and the more dangerous your daily life is. Even though you are at risk in most parts of the country at the moment, at risk of a rocket shelling, at the risk of physical harm, and I'm not even speaking about the psychological toll that the war takes on people throughout the country, and even those that moved from Ukraine. So yeah, it very much depends where you are living. In the parts where my family, my friends or colleagues are living at the moment, indeed, they are very often without electricity, and they had to adjust their life, their working lives, their personal lives to constant electricity interruptions, and that has a really profound effect. In some other places, children also cannot go to school physically. So recently, as the school year has just started, a lot of children continue to study on distance, and it's still you have to be cautious, and try to go to the basements or bomb shelters when there are air alerts, which are very um, frequent. And this is also makes your life very difficult. Planning, organizing your life. It's really is a challenge, and I think people that are not living that reality, even for me personally, it's very hard to comprehend. Being here in Brussels in safety and having all of those basic necessities covered. A lot of people in Ukraine don't have that luxury nowadays, but it is still not as bad as for our soldiers who are on the front lines and in trenches, and they are really in the most difficult of situations nowadays, and we we all must support them, because it is for them the life is a real yeah, challenging.
During the first days and weeks of the war, I remember that Ukraine was doing the headlines in morning news, evening news. There wasn't a day without the situation of Ukraine being discussed and updated. Nowadays, the war continues, but you see Ukraine being covered less and less. I wanted to ask you, do you feel like the world forgot about Ukraine?
No, I don't feel that the world forgot about Ukraine. Of course, the intensity of coverage is not the same as during the first weeks and months of the full-scale invasion. And in the meantime, we had the election year, so obviously also a lot of focus is turned inwards during that kind of periods. But I think Ukraine is still very much important for our partners in the West and also in other countries, and people still follow what's happening. but it is more and more challenging. The longer the war goes, the more challenging it is to keep the focus and attention. However, the fundamental, I think, things did not change, and people still very much understand that Ukraine was attacked by Russia, and that Ukraine's sovereignty is, at stake now, and also democracy is at stake, even speaking more globally, and that it is important to support Ukraine because Ukraine is fighting for the same values that we hold dear here in the West, and therefore um, I'm sure that Ukraine will continue to receive this support. Of course, that this is not always coming as fast as it should be, but the the basics, I think, did not change, even if the media's attention is not as profound as it was in the beginning.
Do you feel tired to see that the war is still ongoing despite all your efforts to try to help the soldiers, even from being here from Brussels? Um, how does it feel nearly 3 years after it started to still be engaged but to not see the end of the war coming?
Of course, we all want the victory as soon as possible, and we all want this to end. We all want our soldiers to go back to their families, and that's I think understandable. Whether we feel a fatigue, no, I don't. We don't feel a fatigue, and we have no right to feel a fatigue, because our what we are doing here is in Brussels, and from Brussels in security. It's nothing compared to indeed what the soldiers are doing on the front lines, and if they can, then we really have no moral right to feel somehow in some way fatigued. No, we are here to try to mobilize support, to fundraise, uh, to enable them to stay as safe as possible, to have the equipment that they need to stay safe, to save lives of themselves and of their um, fellow soldiers. And this is what the civil society and the non-governmental organization, whether Ukrainian or non-Ukrainian organization, are doing inside Ukraine and outside of Ukraine. And this is also what is, I believe, making a difference, and has made a difference in the past, and will continue to make a difference. So no, I don't feel fatigue. I feel responsibility. I feel moral obligation to continue supporting the Ukrainian army that is composed of people like my father, like some of my friends back home in Ukraine, people of different professions, people of different walks of life, different ages, both male and female. And so these are just people just like me, just like you, just like any of our colleagues and friends here in Brussels. So and they really need our support. They are incredibly brave and courageous people that are doing really incredible things to um, make sure that Ukraine still is a country, to make sure that Ukrainians still have a home to go back to. And it is only thanks to them that Ukraine still exists as a country. And if it wouldn't be for them, I would not have a home to go back to, because Ukraine would be just, a new gulag that Russia would turn the country into. So we have really no rights here living in the West, and also Western countries have no moral right to feel any sort of fatigue. All that is required is the support of Ukrainian armed forces, so they can bring that victory faster and save lives with the kind of equipment, modern equipment that is provided and should be provided to them.
Talking about Western partners and the European Union, according to the EEAS, since the start of the war, the EU and member states have made available close to 110 billion in financial, military, humanitarian, and refugee assistance. It will be over 155 billion by 2027. Materially speaking, do you think that the EU and the member states did enough and are still doing enough for Ukraine?
You know, Ukrainians are always very grateful for the support, and you know, it would have been really, really difficult to for our soldiers to resist and defend Ukraine if it wouldn't be for the support that has been provided by the European Union, that has been provided by its member states, the United States, Canada, Japan, all different kinds of countries around the world that came together to um, to try to correct this injustice that has been done by Russia on Ukraine, and to try to help, you know, Ukraine defend itself. And a lot of resources indeed, financial, humanitarian, technical, has been um, provided to Ukraine, which is only natural, because Ukraine is really defending the values that all of us and these countries hold dear. And it's much larger battle than just, you know, between Russia and Ukraine. This is really about the kind of world we want to live in the future, and which norms and rules are going to dominate that world. And if Russia is to win, God forbid, then the world we will be living in is going to be much more darker, much more gloomy, um, and um, and that's why these countries realize that by supporting Ukraine, they are really supporting the good versus the evil, as trivial as it may sound. Um, However, I think no amount of money equal to the lives that have been already lost in this fight against Russian aggression, and so many families, you know, they have been left broken by the tragic losses, you know, of so many most dear people to them. And so really the money is really the least in this case that should be done, and by the by our partners. The money, the military equipment, it's really not not measurable, and you can't really even measure these things. um, and so whatever resources Ukraine needs, and whatever resources Ukrainian army needs, should be provided. And I don't think we should be counting euros and dollars, or any other currency, when it comes to support of Ukrainian armed forces and of Ukrainian people, and Ukrainian displaced, Ukrainian refugees. Of course, this requires a huge amount of resources, as it's unprecedented challenge since the World War II, and Ukraine alone for sure cannot handle this challenge. And that's why this pooling of resources from different countries is needed. But this happens, these resources are being pulled from different countries, and this is a right way forward. And another thing I would like to also stress here is that we still have a huge amount of Russian money that is being that is actually staying in the bank accounts here in Belgium and in some other countries, and all of this money could easily be spent uh, on helping Ukraine instead of um, EU taxpayers or the taxpayers in the West paying for the horrible damages that Russia has brought on to Ukraine. So, while it's of course this pooling of resources from our partners is important and should continue. I also think that a lot of countries should be a lot more open to using Russian money and making Russia actually pay also financially. We have 300 billion worth of euros here just in Belgium. So why not to actually start using this money if we are really talking and calculating and measuring financially how much money we've invested into helping Ukraine and helping Ukraine armed forces. I think first and foremost, it should be Russian money that should be used for this. So I think this is also an important to bring to raise awareness about this fact also among the people in different countries, because I don't think that a lot of an average person is aware how much money is actually being held by uh, EU countries, by the United States, Russian money, I mean, and why not to start using them more effectively? I know that there are some already policies to use some uh, percentages, interest rates that have been gained, but these are still peanuts compared to the amount of money that is actually there, available. And let's start, let's start using that money, and everybody's going to only benefit from this. It's the EU member states will might then need to spend less money, and the real perpetrator, the real aggressor, the terrorist country will actually start paying even more, because we know sanctions have their gaps and not working as effectively as they could. But if we start taking the money that are stored here in the banks, I think that will make a really big difference.
On 25th of June, like Moldova, Ukraine formally opened its accession talks and is expected to kick off a process of further aligning its own legislation to the EU members. It will obviously take years, quite some time, but the Enlargement Commissioner, Oliver Varelli, said that new member states should be ready to join by the end of the next term, which is the 31st of October 2029. According to you, will Ukraine be ready to become an EU member by this time?
So for me, I think the most important is, as long as this membership remains realistic for Ukraine, and as long as there is a clear political will and there is clear interest also from the European Union to have Ukraine as part of its union. Um, I'm sure that Ukrainian civil society, Ukrainian non-governmental organization, Ukrainian expert community will continue to push Ukrainian government, Ukrainian ministries to implement whatever is necessary and whatever is required by the EU acquis. I have no doubts about it. Ukrainian civil society has in the last 10 years shown its dedication to the cause of European integration, and that its readiness really to stand, fight for it, to keep and hold Ukrainian government accountable, to push for reforms, whether it's in anti-corruption, judicial system. And while of course there is still a lot of things that are left to be done, there is definitely a progress, and this progress has happened because Ukraine has been on the trajectory of the European integration, because the Ukrainian civil society, Ukrainian people, citizens, its non-governmental organization and think tanks and expert community have been all united by also by this cause, and have forced the governments to keep on advancing the reforms, keep on progressing in the number of key areas. And of course, with the full-scale invasion, some of these things have accelerated even faster, which is a good thing. And also, I think Ukrainian government, whether this or the future one, also realizes that there is no alternative to the European integration. And I think that they are now, on strongly on this path. Recently, also the Minister of Justice has been combined with the post of Vice Minister for European Integration, in order to streamline some of the laws that will have to be passed as part of this process. So a lot of things is happening. And I'm not worried that Ukraine will not get ready until 2029. I am much more worried that the European Union will not be ready, and that there will be no political momentum, or that political momentum for Ukraine's European integration is going to wane, or there will be 100 different excuses that different member states that are more skeptical are going to come up with, in order to make this less and less realistic. So I'm personally more worried about EU being really ready, both politically but also institutionally ready for new countries, not just Ukraine but also other countries. We also have, I think, a lot of homework to do here in Brussels and in the member states, to prepare the European Union to rethink, reshape it, and make it fit for the new decades to come. And so I think there is a mutual homework that actually needs to happen for new enlargement to be successful, to be realistic, and be possible. And it concerns Ukraine, but it also concerns many other countries that are also waiting for the completion of this process and joining the European Union, joining them as a family member.
You mentioned that Ukraine is doing a lot of progress to indeed match with the requirements to join the European Union. What would you say to those that still express reserves regarding Ukraine joining the EU, especially when it comes to corruption? Some are still not satisfied on this topic. What would you say to those people today?
I'm not, saying that Ukraine is the perfect and everything is great and there is no corruption, and I mean, this is of course not the case. And what I can say is what I know based on analysis of people that have been working on anti-corruption reforms in Ukraine for years. There are plenty of NGOs, such as Anti-Corruption Action Center, and many others that have been closely watching this, what's happening in Ukraine. And they will be the first to tell you that Ukraine is much better today than it was 10, 15 years ago. And some might think that, yeah, corruption is still so widespread in Ukraine, because actually nowadays we are talking about it. There are not only talking, but there are actions being taken by different law enforcement bodies. People are being, prosecuted, investigated, new bodies were created that are actually functioning, that are actually investigating top level corruption officials. This was not the case 10, 15 years ago, and they will tell you that, and these are not people that have some sort of bias because they're working for the government. These are non-governmental organizations that have shown that they are completely independent, whether whoever is in power, they will criticize the government and they will continue pushing it. But they openly say that they see a huge progress, and the Ukraine is much better now, is much handling much better this topic, and is on a good track. There is still things to be done, uh, but things are moving forward. So like I would just like, these people that that make this generalization to also understand or read a little bit more from people who, who've tracked this topic for many years, who are dedicated to this cause. And I think then their view is going to be a lot more nuanced, and they will maybe, change a little bit also their perspective. I mean, of course, there is still things that still need to be done, but gives me confidence that things will be moving in the right direction is the fact that these organizations in 10 years have organizations and people working on this topic, both inside the government and outside of the government, have already managed to achieve such progress, that, in the next 10 years will be even more advanced when it comes to this. Of course, the war brings its own challenges, and that shouldn't be taken lightly. But the most important is that Ukrainians and Ukrainian people are strongly against corruption. This has proven times and times again in all different kinds of surveys, in all different kinds of researches that has been done. And also nowadays, while the war has its challenges, it also brings a certain, well, you could, I don't know, silver lining, because people now have even less tolerance for corruptions, because they actually understand that corruption leads to less equipment to protect their loved ones on the front lines. Corruption leads to all different kinds of bad governance that actually has a real impact in terms of lives of people. So locally, nationally, the people have a very, very little tolerance, even less than before the full-scale invasion, and especially soldiers that are returning from the front lines without limbs, with terrible injuries. uh, they and their families, their level of corruption is also not, it's not something that is not going to be tolerable going forward. And on top of that, I think also the people who used to be corrupted and take money, I think that they will have much harder times taking a bribe from a family of someone who has lost a loved one, or somebody who has a family member, with an injury and amputation. I would like to try to see how this corrupted officials or corrupted people will try to take a bribe from a family like that. So that's why I am actually positive when it comes to the topic of corruption in Ukraine. I'm hopeful that this will improve, and this will not be a problem going forward 10, 15 years from now, when Ukraine will be, ready to join the European Union.
Thank you, Yana. This leads us to the moment for against abstain for the viewers and listeners. So viewers and listeners are put in the shoes of a member of the European Parliament and a policy proposal is on the table. They have to vote for, against, or abstain like a member of the European Parliament. And without surprise, the proposal for this episode is the following. Would you vote for, against, or abstain to Ukraine joining the European Union by 2029 as it is foreseen? So you can vote through the section comments on YouTube or on Instagram. And you can, of course, explain your vote in comments as well. Yana, thank you for answering all these questions regarding Ukraine. It was really insightful, but I think also important. We arrive at the end of the exchange, but before that, I decided to have a little tradition at the end of each episode. It is called the Coeurtisol, and this is, about bringing a light and positive touch at the end of each episode to make sure that we can finish on a more positive note. And this is a question that has nothing to do with the episode of the day. So basically you have 3 paper birds on this table, red, green, and yellow. And you have to tell me which one, first of all, you would like to pick.
Yellow.
Yellow. I thought so because of the Ukrainian flag. So can you give me, first of all, a number between 1 and 10?
5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And can you pick one of these among these 4 colors? Which one would you like?
Maybe the green.
The green. Which leads us to question number 13. And the question number 13 is the following. If you had an extra room in your home, what would you use it for?
Good question. I think a very big fish tank.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's an original answer. But thank you so much. I think you didn't probably expect to have this kind of question. So thank you, and thanks everyone for watching this episode. Once again, don't forget to think before you click. We are all human beings behind the screens. This is an important reminder. See you soon on Coeurtisol. Bye bye.